All right. The next story that we have is one from this is coming to us from Collider, and this is the Nightwing movie director Chris McKay is teasing his quote unquote badass action take. I don't believe it's one of the DCEU movies, at least like it's not in their official lineup or whatever. But Chris McKay, who has done the Lego Batman movie, he was a producer on the Lego Ninjago movie that's coming out this week. He was asked by people from Collider about finally bringing Dick Grayson to the big screen, which we should preface right now. I'm a fan of Dick Grayson in the comic books, and been a fan, and been a fan since the animated series. And Corey,
you are my favorite comic book character of all time. Next, well, him. Yeah. And Kitty Pryde together are my two favorite comic book characters.
Yes,
there's certainly a case to be made for either one being my favorite at any given time.
He has volumes and volumes of fanfic to prove that.
I seriously, like the one time I thought about doing fanfic, well, two times, but the more specific time was I wanted to do fanfic of Dick Grayson and Kitty Pryde and other various characters from other comic book universes doing a spin-off of The Exiles, where they were going through different alternate dimensions and stuff and going to all these different comic universes and stuff and meeting other characters and trying to solve what was going to be a merging of all of their universes into one that was going to destroy what was basically their home universes. But it was to get Kitty Pryde and Dick Grayson in the same story together.
Yeah. So he had this quote here, and I'm gonna paraphrase some of the things of it. But he says he's a big comic book fan, and really being able to do the story of Nightwing, to do a Dick Grayson story, which is a character, and I would agree with this completely, is a character that every single person in the world knows, but has never really had a lot of screen time. They make a billion Spider-Man movies and a lot of Batman movies, and they've tried the Hulk. And when they were making the Tim Burton movies, they were always like, "Oh, maybe we'll do Robin in this now. Maybe we'll save Robin for Returns. Nope, we'll save it for the next one." With Christopher Nolan, people were like, "Is he gonna do Robin?" When they made Batman vs Superman, they were talking about it. I'm a big fan of underdog stories, and he is one of the biggest underdog stories in comics, and he's a character that I grew up with. I like the arc. The arc is, of course, the Zero to Hero arc, going from the Flying Graysons to being adopted by Bruce Wayne to becoming, his first Robin, then becoming Nightwing.
Yeah, the true underdog story of a guy who loses his family and then is adopted by the richest motherfucker on the planet, who is also a superhero that can protect you for your entire life, but instead puts a red suit on you like a giant fucking bullseye and pushes you in between him and the Joker.
Yeah. No,
hey,
no,
I'm gonna wear all this black fucking armor, and you go over there in some booties and some shorty shorts, okay?
Yep. But no, I mean, honestly, I look at this and there's so much that you can do, and I'm gonna say don't necessarily have it tied in at least heavily with the DCEU, but that you can do with Dick Grayson. I mean, even with looking at the past 5 years of comics alone, with him being a spy, you just retcon it to where, okay, he was a spy before he was Nightwing. So you bring in Spiral with that, and you have these interesting stories and develop his moral code and all that stuff. He becomes Nightwing and all that. And there's a bunch of different ways that they can do this that, and probably minor shit, but hey, I'm used to it. But it would be a really cool thing to see, and it would be different from the typical Batman story, even using some of Batman's villains.
One of the things that to me is essential to who Dick Grayson is that he has been the teen sidekick. And I know the teen sidekick is itself why they don't use him in the movies, because they always are afraid that it's going to become the Batman 66 TV series and go camp, because, now we've got these two guys that are hanging out, and sorry, everybody, they're not actually gay. They're just friends, or he's his ward. That's one of the main worries. And of course, the person who jumps in that grenade and relishes in it was Joel Schumacher, who more or less emulated the silliness and the campiness of the 66 series, which is fine. Those movies were successful in a sense. Batman Forever certainly was more successful. Batman and Robin killed the franchise. So I can understand why they are worried about that. And because having a Robin takes away from the loner Dark Knight aspect of Batman. Because once Batman has a team, he has to think outside of himself, and he can't take the same amount of risks that he would take alone. It changes the entire dynamic into a duo. But more or less, I get it. But I don't want to see a Dick Grayson that doesn't have this history of growing up being the partner to Batman, being trained by Batman, having all of that is essential to who he is. It was the entry point for a lot of kids. It's like, I want to be Robin. Robin is my identifier in the Batman universe. I can't be Batman, but I could be Robin, and that's cool.
And to sort of walk back, because I did jump that part, I could say you could honestly have that as a backstory, but still do the Tim Seeley written Grayson storyline from the New 52.
Which again,
yes, again,
the Spiral stuff. If you're going to do the Spiral stuff, you might as well be doing a James Bond movie. You might as well be doing Kingsman or something of that effect, and not use Dick Grayson. Because while it's a decent storyline, it's a storyline that is surrounded by all the other shit that was Nightwing. And that's not a Nightwing. They didn't even call the book Nightwing. They called it Grayson. So it's a tough call to figure out what to hone in on for what Dick Grayson's character. Because there was the series where he was a cop in Bloodhaven, which is something that I really enjoyed a lot. And his main villain was Blockbuster. The Bloodhaven stuff would be incredible to use, but modernize it and change things and everything else. But it's still, he's had such a rich history because he's been around for 70 years. It still looks like he's in his 20s, but I get all that. I want to see a take where he actually has been Robin.
Yeah.
He's Nightwing now, but he has been Robin, because otherwise it doesn't make sense. He could just be anybody. It sounds like the feel of the movie is going to be non-CGI. It's going to be more practical stuff and everything. And at that point, it could just be Daredevil, because he is a man on the street. Daredevil's powers set him apart a little bit, but for the most part, he's a fisticuffs fighter, which Robin / Nightwing would be, except Robin more or less does more with acrobatics.
Okay, you're getting to something very dangerous here, and that's the fuck it. They've done it before. Let's not watch anything ever again.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying is embrace all of it.
Yeah,
embrace all of it and make sense out of it to make a quality film. But if you start picking and choosing and you ignore the very base parts of it, it doesn't do any good to then make it be that person. And, it's like I'm going to do a Catwoman movie, except I'm not going to have her be anything like the actual Catwoman. It's not going to be Selena Kyle. She's not going to be a villain for Batman. She's going to be some random woman that has ripped up pants and gets her powers from an Egyptian goddess or some bullshit. Yeah, that's what happens when you don't pay attention to the source material. So you've got to be respectful to what Dick Grayson actually is.
Yeah.
You also got to be respectful to Barbara Gordon, who she actually is, and not make her origin tied to I want to fuck the Batman, because that's a bunch of bullshit, and it's a crappy way to introduce a female character into what is supposed to be her own animated film. Fuck you, DC, for doing that. Fuck you.
Yeah, so
fuck you.
I was waiting for it. No, I agree with that completely, because it's one of the things that I was going to go back to, with not necessarily tying it so heavily to the DCEU, because
not necessarily to the DCEU, but in the same sense of Batman's got to exist.
No,
it might not be the Batfleck Batman.
Hold on. Let me rephrase, because with what DC is trying to do, they are trying to create a universe so hard that they are forcing it down our throats.
Vaporware.
Yes. What I'm saying is Batman exists in this universe. It can even be Ben Affleck's Batman, but don't bring in these other... The only exception would be if they're going to stick with the origin, Superman, because Superman gave him the name of Nightwing in either origin that you go with. Like, I believe it's pre-crisis or post-crisis.
Pre-crisis, the name Nightwing existed as a character that Superman's identity when he would go into the bottled city of Kandor.
Yes.
And he and Jimmy Olsen would fight crime as a Batman and Robin duo. It was Nightwing and Flamebird. And then they were eventually replaced by people who were actually from Kandor, who could be there full time to do it. And then, Nightwing. Yeah. It wasn't specifically stated. It was a name that was kind of floating around like, well, we got to make another Batman. Let's make Nightwing, because that's a name that kind of we've associated with Batman for a long time. And then they retconned the name in.
Yeah. And the other part of it is, and it's something I like a little bit more from the New 52, where Superman I'm paraphrasing like hell here, but Superman told him this story of a almost like Santa Claus in that way, like the mythological creature or being thing, and roughly translated to English, it was Nightwing. That'd be the only two characters that I could really see you coming in. And even then, both of those are either backstory stuff with Batman, or it's a rooftop chit chat as the beginning or the end, or however they do it, with Superman, and he's like, I like the name of Nightwing, and Nightwing at the end of the movie. But other than that, we don't need Wonder Woman, we don't need Flash, we don't need Cyborg, unless you're going to do something with the Teen Titans, and it's going to, confuse the fuck out of people.
That's another thing we need to mention, is the fact that right now they're developing and getting pretty close to production on a TV series that is going to feature the Dick Grayson character.
And so you're going to get into another thing here that I'm worried about, and that is DC, where they're not doing a shared universe like Marvel is quote unquote doing. They're only allowing their characters to be in one area. Now, Gotham is the exception because, in my opinion, it's like, who gives a fuck about Gotham?
Gotham is the fucking Wild West.
Yes, but you saw this with the CW or with the DCW universe of shows where they pulled out the Suicide Squad. They killed off all of them or whatever, so that, hey, because they're doing the movie. And same thing with Deathstroke, where he was trapped on Lian Yu, and they're doing a movie. Oh, that movie fell through. He might not be in there. Okay, hey, you want Deathstroke back? Here you go. I would much rather they just tell us great fucking stories. I would much rather.
That's all I've been asking.
Yeah, I think me and you've been asking this for a while now, but it's like, just share, just do these great stories, because again, with a lot of these characters, you have 70 plus years of material. Some of that has to be gold, or something that you can use, be like, yeah, this storyline would make a great movie, sort of deal. Because it, like, I don't know why we have to rely on, okay, Spider-Man comes up, okay, well, we gotta retell his origins. Batman comes up, well, we gotta retell his origins. Everyone and my 2-year-old niece knows Batman's origins. I didn't teach her. It's like, everyone knows the origin of Batman. Everyone knows all these things. We don't need more.
Although your niece might not know the origin of Dick Grayson.
No. And to be honest, she doesn't know
up on the screen that much.
Yeah, she doesn't know the origin of Batman, but that's because I haven't taught her that yet.
Nobody should be happier than me about the potential of a Nightwing movie. And I absolutely am excited. And Chris McKay sounds like he's got a very strong take on it. That is, if you ignore the disappointments that I have for the other DC films in this current roster so far, and you just say, all on its own, this guy wants to make a Nightwing movie, and these are the concepts and things that he wants to do to make a Nightwing movie. First thing is, well, he better have a great ass, because that is a Nightwing trait. And second of all, sounds fantastic. So I have no reason to think that Joseph Gordon-Levitt wouldn't make a great Dick Grayson. He just hasn't yet, because that ending was bullshit.
I was going. I want to believe the great ass part.
Sure, I haven't really paid that much attention. Didn't see a lot of it on Third Rock from the Sun.
That was underage ass.
Yeah, whatever. I really want there to be a potentially great film here, and hopefully they will. But those are the criteria that I would have going in. It needs to be not just a guy in a costume saying that he's Nightwing. It needs to be the actual Dick Grayson character, with sure caveats, because it's a film universe and they're not going to be able to state there's 70 years of storylines have happened, of course. But they need to at least hit the points that make the character who he is and who he has been. And just like Superman has points that you have to reach, and Wonder Woman has points that you have to reach, and Batman has points you have to reach, these things are the essential things of, like, if anybody went through the entire catalog of these characters, they would come out and say, well, this is who this person is. They could bring it down to the finest distilled essence. And this is Dick Grayson, and this is Bruce Wayne, and this is Diana of Themyscira. That's the things that I want these movies to get right. And I feel like for the faults that they might have, and there certainly are some, Marvel understands its characters when it brings them up to the screens in the way that the current crop of DC movies, say for Wonder Woman, have not done for me yet. And that is, I'm saying for me, because it's my opinion. I know a lot of people are enjoying them, and a lot of people say, well, I didn't like Superman until I saw him break Zod's neck. That's great. But that is a Superman that is made for the screen that is not the Superman that was made from the comics. And you can point to a couple of very disturbingly rare stories where shit like that maybe has come close or been similar, but it's still not Superman. It's not the 70 plus years of Superman, of who Superman actually is. So, and if you have to change the character to make them feel relevant, then don't use that character, because you don't know what to make that character work on screen. Make a new character and do that story that you want to tell. Don't decide you want to tell a story and plug that character in just because you have the rights to it and you think it'll make good window dressing for the fucking story that you want to tell. That's not how it's supposed to work.
B is bringing up, you know, a Punisher. I feel like the Punisher is probably one of the most difficult characters to make at Marvel and have it be true. It's, to put it in other words, it's probably the easiest to do, like in the DCEU style that we have seen, where it's like they're missing the heart of the comic book of what it's based off of, because they have done that where, and I will admit, I love the Thomas Jane Punisher movie.
Me too.
I love how that was shot. I love everything in there. Are there plot holes? Yes. Is there, you know, things that are wrong? Yes. But it's also one of those.
Yes.
But you know, it was one of those, like, I look, because again, you know, they released the trailer for the Punisher Netflix TV show, and I haven't seen it, but apparently it's, you know, it has Punisher fans saying this is the show that we've been wanting. I think the Punisher is one of those difficult ones because a lot of people will have a problem with violence when it comes to, you know, it's such extreme violence. Like, you can get by Daredevil going down a stairwell, you know, punching people and knocking them out, or Captain America throwing his shield and it bounces off of 20 different points and then hits a guy in the side of the head, because it's not killing them. In theory, it is only incapacitating them. But when you have a character who is designed to kill, you could almost call him MODOK, he just kills the bad guys, it's sort of not going to play well, and especially not going to do merchandise well for these companies.
Yeah, and that's, you're absolutely correct in that. I remember in the late 80s, early 90s, when Punisher got popular, there was also a character called Scourge who was going around and showing up and just killing Marvel villains, just showing up and shooting them and everything. And it kind of made me feel sick to my stomach, because it's a finality. At that point in time, death in comics still kind of meant something. But it was just like random drive-by shootings of characters, the characters that you know, and certainly aren't supposed to root for in the case of villains, but it's just such a extreme thing to do, which fucking 90s comics to the extreme. But Punisher is supposed to be an uncomfortable character. Punisher is supposed to be a character that makes the heroes more heroic. That's why he wasn't supposed to lead his own book, but he became very compelling. It was at a time when that kind of character drew a lot of readers. Like Wolverine. Wolverine was supposed to be the darkest character of the X-Men and had a dark history and was far more violent and everything. But he balances really great in a team. When you put him in his own book to do that, it's harder to make it compelling. It's like doing a Joker comic book. People say, oh, I love a Joker comic book. Yeah, but you really have to have the right person doing the Joker comic book, and you can't play lightly. And in the films, the Punisher films so far, even going back to the Dolph Lundgren stuff, they were as violent as they felt they could be with still trying to be a mainstream movie. But it was lightweight compared to what the Punisher should actually be. The violence of who he is and where that stems from is something that you really have to put it up on the screen to have audiences be able to understand who he is and tell that story. And I feel like you're right. In the trailer for the Punisher series, because I have watched it for the Netflix, while the Punisher is not a favorite character of mine, I totally agree with how they are utilizing him. And the high scale violence is necessary for it. And if you like things like John Wick, then you will enjoy the Punisher, because it is, except it doesn't have some of the kind of tongue-in-cheek humor that John Wick does get away with, but it has, the motivations are very similar. It makes sense, but he's not going to be a lot of people's favorite show, and he shouldn't be their favorite show or favorite character. But if you like it, then you're going to love what they're doing with it. And again, because it gets to the values of what the character is, and you can call them values when he just wants to kill people. I rewatched Punisher War Journal the other night because I hadn't seen it since the first time it hit cable. And I was just like, I should check it out again and see what it really is. And it is such a bad movie. But it does for the most part, get Frank Castle correct in that he's just relentless on killing people. And the Thomas Jane movie, while I enjoy a lot of it, and it's evocative of the Garth Ennis run on the comic when he was first doing it, is not as true to that, because they try to give him a family, but they do also break down why he can't have one. But it's so lighthearted in so much of it that it's not gruesome enough for what the character should be.
Yeah.
And a fun Punisher is not the right Punisher.
No, yeah, definitely.
For more on this Galactic Network podcast, go to gncast.com. That's GNCASTS.com.